Welcome to the Less Stressed Lawyer Show.
Hello and welcome back to the Less Stressed Lawyer Show with Miss Olivia Zacharel. Olivia is a former attorney turned life and business coach for lawyers. She helps ambitious attorneys stop overthinking, set boundaries, and take bold action so they can build a practice and a life they actually love. I'm Evan Mack, and today we're talking about why so many lawyers keep waiting to feel ready and how to start taking action before that moment ever arrives. Miss Olivia, welcome back.
So good to see you.
So, Ms. Olivia, lawyers are trained to be experts. Why do you think that makes so many of them hesitant to take action until they feel completely qualified?
I think their standard for what makes them an expert, what constitutes enough expertise, is just really vague and ambiguous to begin with, but also way too high. So people tend to default to, I don't know what an expert is, but it's not me. It's not this level of experience. So we're constantly in pursuit of something that feels out of reach. And they also have an expectation of how they think they should feel once they've hit that level of expertise. It's sort of like when you're a kid, you think that being an adult is going to have a certain feeling to it, right? You're going to feel a certain way, like you have everything figured out, you've got it all together. And then you are an adult and you're like, oh, I was mistaken. There are still things that I don't know. I'm still figuring it out as I go along. It doesn't mean that you're not an adult. It just feels different than you expected it to feel. And I think expertise is very similar to that. You just expect it to feel much more dialed in, like there's no question you wouldn't know the answer to, that you can do it like in your sleep. And that's just not the case.
What does waiting to feel ready actually look like in a practice for an attorney? Whether it's business development, trying cases, or making a career move.
It looks like procrastination, honestly. And I think this is a way that people procrastinate on things in order to avoid discomfort, but they do it under the guise of not having enough expertise or needing more experience before they're ready. So it seems very responsible for them to do this. So in business development, it's going to look like not meeting people, telling them what you do, adding value, making offers to help them. When you're earlier in your career, you're going to think, oh, I need to practice for 10 years before I can start marketing on social media or really going to networking events. Who's going to hire me at this level of experience, rather than thinking, hey, I can start building relationships now. Just because I'm newer in my career doesn't mean that the people I work with and me as part of that team can't help them. And I want to start laying the foundation for developing business later on in life. So let me do that now while I don't feel super experienced. So the foundation is there when I do have that experience. For trying cases, I actually worked with someone when I was in big law, and she came into my office. She had been given an opportunity to argue a motion, and it was her first motion hearing on a matter that was really substantial, not like a motion to compel discovery, but something much more robust. And the attorney that she was working for believed in her ability to do it, obviously with some handholding and some support and guidance. And she turned down the offer. And I've seen other people do this as well. They'll get an opportunity to cross-examine a witness at a trial, and they won't feel ready. So they turn down the opportunity until they feel more prepared later. But the thought error here is that you'll feel more prepared without the experience. So feeling more prepared is going to come from doing it when you feel uncomfortable doing it, and then learning from it, auditing and adapting. What did I do well? What didn't I do well? What do I want to change next time? And then getting a little bit better each time.
So how does perfectionism or fear of judgment feed into this idea that more preparation will finally create that confidence?
So the fear of judgment, I always like to get a little bit more specific of this. What are you afraid to be judged for? For me, as a perfectionist, I used to have a deep fear of feeling embarrassed, but also being perceived as messy or not having my stuff together, so to speak. And when you're learning, it's going to feel messy. It's going to feel clunky. You might do some things well, you might do some other things not so well, and that's okay. The point is to improve. So when you're being perfectionistic with yourself, you're saying that if it's not 100% exceptional, if I don't nail it on my first try, then I shouldn't do it. And people are going to judge me for it. They're going to think that I'm not good enough or that I'm not capable. And you think that if you do feel that way, then everything will go smoothly. But perfect isn't attainable. There's no one who's doing anything perfectly. There's always room for improvement. And it also begs the question on what constitutes perfect. Like, perfect to who? One person might have one way of doing things, another person might have a different way of doing things, and neither of them are right or wrong. So you just want to check in with yourself. What are you afraid of? What do you think that more preparation would allow you to avoid? Chances are that's what I would call like a perfectionist fantasy. You're not going to be able to avoid that in theory if you go out and start taking those opportunities. So if you want to avoid it, you have to avoid the opportunity entirely in order to avoid that fear of judgment.
Many lawyers assume confidence comes from their experience. Why do you teach that it actually works the other way around?
So it's funny because when I think about this, confidence does come from experience, but not in the way that people think, right? So they think the longer I do something, the more confident I will feel. But actually, it's you have to start feeling very not confident and then get the experience. And then once you learn that you didn't die and that the world didn't stop spinning and you created some evidence that you actually did a pretty good job and it didn't all go terribly like you thought it would, then you feel a little bit more confident to do it again next time. So you build confidence through taking uncomfortable action that you don't feel quite prepared enough to take. And when you focus on that, and you normalize that that is the way that you gain confidence, showing yourself that you can handle it, that you have the emotional capacity to experience doing something that you don't quite feel prepared to do, and that it doesn't all go poorly. You'll start to feel more confident in your ability to navigate whatever comes. And I think that's really where people become like unshakable and unflappable.
Practical steps help lawyers build confidence through action instead of waiting for maybe permission or that reassurance.
So one thing I think is important for people as far as reassurance goes is asking, does the reassurance actually make you feel better? Because a lot of times it doesn't. People will reassure you and you still feel doubt. You still feel unsure. You still don't feel confident to go out and do something. So if you're craving reassurance, just check in with yourself. When you actually get it, does it move the dial? If it doesn't, that's just something important to pay attention to so you don't have to keep waiting for it, that permission or reassurance. The thing that I would look at is, okay, what is it that I want to do? What would help me get to the next level? What action do I feel either unprepared, unqualified, or nervous to take? And then start to make a list. What do I think I don't know? And there may be practical things that you need to learn, knowledge gaps, and you can seek a mentor to help you with that. You can ask colleagues, hey, how do you go about doing this? I also teach that you can create your own process for things. So let's say you want to take a deposition and it's your first deposition. You can talk to people you work with about how do you prepare for that? What's your process? How do you determine what questions to ask? Those might be things that you're not feeling confident about or unsure about, and you can gather more information to fill those knowledge gaps. Now, once you've completed that list, you're still going to feel unprepared because you haven't done it before. That's normal. It's like a self-fulfilling prophecy or a cycle that goes nowhere. We want the experience that comes from doing something before we have to do it, and we won't do it if we don't have that experience, but the only way to get that experience is to do the thing without it, right? So you have to separate, these are the things that I didn't know how to do, and I created some awareness and some learning for myself. And then on this side, this is just where I'm going to have to do it and feel uncomfortable and gag and go through that and come out on the other side.
How can someone tell the difference between that healthy preparation and just plain old avoidance?
So getting more specific about what it is that's holding you back. And if it falls into that category of like, I'm just nervous, I'm just afraid I'm going to do a bad job, you can ask yourself why. Why do I think I'm going to do a bad job? And if the answer is like, I've never done this before, then you're coming up against that plain old avoidance. If you can pinpoint to, I don't know how to do something very specifically, and I need more information, like we'll use jury selection as an example. If you've never picked a jury before, you might have questions about how to go about picking a jury, and you could talk to someone or do some research on things that you can do. Is the judge going to ask most of the questions for voir dire? Do the attorneys get to do it? How much can you introduce themes? Like, those are all things that you would use to better prepare for you taking that on. But then if you're nervous about what questions to ask, you can start to identify some questions to ask. And then when that's been done, you're asking yourself, well, why am I still nervous? Then it's going to come down to, I've never done this before. And it's like, okay, well, you've come up with a game plan for how to do it, and it's going to feel uncomfortable. You're going to have to do it a little scared, but you've really exhausted the things that you don't know and created as much knowing as you can for yourself. And now it's just time to take action.
So what tends to happen is when a lawyer finally acts before feeling ready, what shifts internally once they do it anyway?
So they realize that they're capable of doing it scared. There's so much fear of experiencing negative emotions. When I talk to clients, they're like, I can't handle that feeling. And I promise you, you have the capacity to experience those negative emotions. They're not going to take you out. So you start to have trust for yourself that you can really get through any emotional experience. We create such a huge, heavy narrative about how awful doing something when you don't feel ready is going to be. But if you really start to pinpoint what's the specific negative emotion you're going to have to feel, all that's happening is you're feeling that feeling in your body somewhere. You might feel like nervous in the pit of your stomach. You might feel, your face get hot when you're scared. Your heart might race. Your palms might be sweaty. But that's all that's happening. And when you start to normalize, oh, that's just part of the human experience, doing things and feeling a little afraid sometimes, but I can handle that physically in my body. Nothing's going to go extremely wrong. Then you start to trust yourself to be able to do those things and come out on the other side. And if you have that type of confidence in your ability to navigate something, then you're really able to take more action. I think most people mistake confidence as, I feel confident in my ability to do it flawlessly or extremely well. That doesn't need to be the confidence that you work towards creating for yourself. You want to have the confidence that you can handle it no matter what, that you can handle the negative experience, you can handle the emotions that don't feel super comfortable, and that you can handle figuring it out. And you can handle it if it's not going to go the way that you would prefer it to go, if it's a little clunky or something goes wrong.
Can you share a story of a client who stopped waiting for confidence and saw a major change in their results or maybe their mindset?
Totally. So the biggest one that I see is with business development, people who refuse to go to networking events or post on social media because they're saying, I'm not experienced enough. No one's going to take me seriously. I'm too new in my career. No one wants to hear what I have to say. And when we work on identifying, okay, you might have to feel a little insecure or a little self-doubt or a little embarrassed or a little exposed in front of other people, and take that action of posting on social media or meeting people at networking events and talking about the work that you do. When they're able to get over that hurdle and stop thinking that they need to do more work in order to do that business development stuff, they're able to start creating business for themselves. And having their own book creates such a level of autonomy and freedom that people in law firms don't experience otherwise. So that can be completely life-changing, much higher bonuses, but also a seat at the table and a lot of say-so over who you work with, who you don't have to work with, how much you work, whether you're able to take time off, when you prefer to take time off. So those are the biggest instances where I see it really being a game changer, but also in changing people's experiences of their day-to-day work life. I was working with a client years ago, and he said that he had a lot of anxiety about defending depositions. And I always thought that was kind of curious, because I would have thought there's more preparation required for taking a deposition, and that would be the more nerve-wracking experience for an attorney. And we started to explore, like, what standards was he holding him to? What expectations was he having for how it should go? And he was hoping that, like, it goes flawlessly and that the person who's being deposed doesn't say anything that they're not supposed to or make any mistakes. And when we created a more attainable definition of what a good enough deposition looked like, which is you prep a little bit or as much as you have time for, but not as much as you'd probably prefer. If time was infinite, you're going to go over the most relevant stuff, but not be able to go over everything with the witness. And the witness is going to answer some questions exceptionally well, some questions not so well, and most questions probably just fine. And then whatever the testimony is, you'll argue about it afterwards. When we created that definition of good enough, he was able to calm down and feel much more confident about the work he was doing to prepare for those, feel much more confident about how they went afterwards. So I think it's really important to check in with your expectations for yourself and see if they're aligned with you feeling confident or you feeling inadequate.
And for a lawyer listening who's been holding back on something, maybe launching a firm, raising rates, or taking a case to trial, what's one small concrete action they can take today to prove to themselves that readiness isn't required?
Go through the what if in your mind. What are you afraid will happen? And make a plan for it. Again, confidence is going to come from you trusting your ability to be able to handle whatever comes. So people will hold themselves back from starting their own firm. Okay, make the game plan. How will you get clients? If you get clear on the how, which is basically what I talked about earlier, like what knowledge gaps are you unclear about? What information do you need? As you start to answer those questions, you're getting clear on the how. If you are thinking about raising rates and it feels scary to do that, okay, well, what does feel attainable? Maybe you don't have to do a $50 rate increase. You could do a $10 rate increase, and that will create enough information or proof that people don't freak out, your clients don't go running for the hills. So get clear on what you would need to do, the how, in order to move forward. And once you have that, you've really eliminated half the discomfort. And now you're just leaving that remainder, which is coming from, I haven't done this thing before, so I feel a little nervous about how it's going to go because there's stuff that's unknown to me. But if you can get clear on the steps to get there, it will really help you feel more confident in your ability to do it, even if it feels scary.
Awesome. Thank you, Miss Olivia.
My pleasure.
All right. That's it for today's episode of the Less Stressed Lawyer Show. If you're ready to stop overthinking and start making bold moves in your life and your practice, visit oliviavizacaro.com. Don't forget to like, leave a review, and subscribe to the show so you never miss an episode. Thank you so much, and we'll see you next time.
Thanks for watching. Be sure to hit that like and subscribe button and leave us a review in the comments.